Today on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up here in the SEC in Week 8 of this 2021 college football season. And it'll be over the Tennessee Volunteers and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Huge matchup for each of these teams going into Week 8. We got Tennessee on one side. This is a football team that is coming off of a very tough loss, to say the least, to Ole Miss last week. And, of course, Tennessee, this is still a very talented football team that could definitely still get to a good bowl game. But as for Alabama, if this team takes one more loss in the regular season, this team is out of the college football playoffs. So high stakes for both these teams heading into this matchup. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Tennessee last week lost to Ole Miss, 13th ranked team in the nation at the time, 26-31. Quite an ending. I mean, that game was, it had a lot of controversy at the end, that's for sure, but overall still it was a close game, so Tennessee definitely played well. Considering how talented of a team Ole Miss is. Nonetheless, still a tough loss. But Tennessee is 4-3. This is a good football team. I mean, I could see this team getting up to 7 or 8 wins potentially. I mean, the schedule does not really get any easier, but I mean, this is still a team that's got a lot of potential and plenty of talent for sure. Alabama bounced back from their loss against Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago with a big win over Mississippi State. 49-9 was the final score there. They are 6-1 and back up into the top 4 as the number 4 ranked team in the country. So once again, Alabama, I mean, this is a football team that if they take one more loss in the regular season, it's hard to see a way that Alabama can get into the college football playoff, even if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. I mean, a 2-loss team probably will never get into the college football playoff, especially if the playoff remains at 4 teams. So for Alabama, high stakes for them especially. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on this football team right now because, I mean, you've already taken one loss. So if you take another one, that's going to really decrease your chances of making a run at the college football playoff. Game will be on Saturday, October 23rd in Tuscaloosa. So Crimson Tide are the home team for this matchup. It'll be a night game as well. 7 p.m. Eastern time is the time for this matchup. Spread is Alabama by 27.5. So Crimson Tide are favored significantly in this matchup. And the FPI is going Alabama 91.2%. So obviously, night game in Alabama, it's going to be a tough game for Tennessee to try to win. I mean, if it was an afternoon game or, I mean, earlier in the day, potentially it'd be a little easier. But obviously night games are, I mean, it's much tougher to win road games when you're having to go to a location in the evening hours. Over-under is 67 as well. Series history, Alabama leads at 57-38. So obviously Crimson Tide have led the series for a while, and they've won 14 straight times. Last time Tennessee won this game was in 2006. Kind of hard to believe, especially considering, I mean, Tennessee, they've had a few good years in the past couple of decades, but obviously they've had not much success against Alabama, who has won 14 straight. That's quite a streak there for the Crimson Tide. So obviously, I mean, Nick Saban and this football team has had a lot of success against Tennessee in the past couple of decades. Here's your stat comparison for this matchup. Tennessee's got 39 points per game, 22 points allowed. 223 pass yards a game, 249 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 232 passing, and then 136 for rushing. As for Alabama, 45 points per game, 20 points allowed, 316 pass yards a game, 166 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 210 passing, 93 for rushing. So obviously, I mean, Alabama, as they always do, very talented rush defense. And overall, I mean, this is a football team that lost a lot of talent after 2020. And that was kind of a concern for most people was, I mean, looking at Alabama, they lost a lot of talent after their 2020 national title season. And so, I mean, for Alabama, this is a football team that, I mean, this is a great sign for the future of Alabama, seeing this team having as much success as they are. I mean, they did take a loss to Texas A&M there, but, I mean, with as young of a team as Alabama is right now, that's kind of bound to happen. But this is a great sign for the next 3 years if you're an Alabama fan because, I mean, with as young of a team as this Alabama team is, I mean, they've had a lot of success, and that's a great sign for the future of Alabama. Recent matchups for each of these teams. Tennessee lost to Ole Miss there, 26-31, 13th ranked team in the nation at the time. Beat South Carolina and Missouri. Those were two quality wins there. Beat South Carolina 45-20. Beat Missouri 62-24. Put up 60 points on the Tigers there. Lost to Florida, number 11 team in the nation at the time, 14-38. Now looking back with Florida out of the rankings, it's not a very good loss there. But I mean, once again, Tennessee, this is a football team that, I mean, they've been very inconsistent. That's been the problem is, I mean, Tennessee one week can look excellent, but the next week, not so much. As for Alabama, beat Mississippi State there 49-9, lost to Texas A&M 38-41, beat Ole Miss, beat Southern Miss, and Florida. I mean, so Alabama definitely has got some quality wins on their schedule. Beat Ole Miss by 3 touchdowns, beat Southern Miss 63-14, beat Florida by 2 as well. So once again, even though they had a huge slip up, like that was, I mean, that Texas A&M loss was probably I would say arguably the biggest upset of the college football playoff era to this point. I mean, if you think about it, the amount of streaks that were broken there for Alabama, I mean, this football team hadn't lost to a ranked team or to an unranked team in a very long time. So, I mean, that's really what was crazy about that game. But once again, I mean, it's hard to see Nick Saban and this football team losing another regular season game. I mean, potentially they lose the SEC championship game, which, I mean, this team still might not make the top 4 if they do lose the SEC championship. We'll have to see what happens there. But obviously, with the amount of upsets that we're seeing in this football season, I mean, anything can happen. But some key points here: Tennessee 4-3 right now. Tough loss last week to Ole Miss once again. They've shown potential though in the last few weeks. I mean, this team is definitely improving, and I think Tennessee, this is a football team that, I mean, if they could have won last week, I mean, that could have been a huge win for this program. Being up to 5-2 and knocking on the door of a bowl game, and potentially a pretty good one as well, which is still within reach. I mean, this team could get up to 7 or 8 wins, which, I mean, that put you in a pretty good bowl game, especially considering the past few years for Tennessee kind of being in a rebuilding phase. But, I mean, they're going to have to win the turnover margin here in this matchup if they want to win. I mean, Alabama is a very good football team, and, I mean, even if you make 1 or 2 mistakes, I mean, it's going to be very tough to beat Alabama. So you got to play really well. Texas A&M, the main thing that Texas A&M did was, I mean, from the start, they played very well, and they got a couple of touchdowns up on the board. I mean, for Tennessee, that's what they're going to have to do. I mean, you got to start fast, and you really can't let off the gas pedal till the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter. But as for Alabama, bounce back win against Mississippi State last week, without a doubt, huge win for this football team, destroying Mississippi State by 40. Chances of this team losing another one. I mean, it's tough to see Alabama losing another football game, especially in the regular season, as I said earlier. But we'll have to see what happens. I mean, we've seen some crazy things happen in this 2021 season, and Alabama is back on their home field as well, which is great news for Alabama. This team has got a good home field advantage, especially with it being at night. But that being said, let's get to the prediction here for Tennessee and Alabama. I'm going to go Crimson Tide here big. 42-20 is my final score. I mean, Tennessee might hang around for a little bit, but once again, I mean, Alabama is just too good of a football team, and with it being a home night game for them, I mean, I see Alabama running away with this one, especially in the second half. Probability, Alabama 85%, so I'm going Crimson Tide here. I'm pretty certain that Alabama will win. I mean, who knows? Once again, it's 2021. We've seen some crazy things happen in this football season, so potentially Tennessee could pull a major upset, but I just don't see it happening right now. I think Alabama gets the win 42-20, and I'd say, I mean, I'd be very surprised if Alabama didn't win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I mean, I think Alabama's going to win it by a couple of touchdowns here for sure. Over-under is 67. I'm taking the under by 5 in this matchup. But that being said, appreciate you guys all watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game. And yeah, let me know your thoughts once again. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys later.